Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the regular Attleboro School Committee meeting for Monday, October 7th, 2024. This is your notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. To start our meeting, I will turn it over to our Student Advisory Council for an update.
All right, so we do have a few updates that I wanted to talk about today. I'm just going to pull up my notes so I make sure I get everything right. Always good to make sure we're prepared. So I did want to talk about the phone policy, specifically at the high school, and how well it's been working. So I know that a lot of students had some backlash at the beginning, and they were kind of like, not scared to say, but they were worried about it, what it would entail. However, over the last few weeks, we have seen a lot of students participating very well. A lot of students have kind of realized that Attleboro is being very, very generous with our phone policy, as a lot of schools are just outright banning them. And Attleboro's allowed them during passing times, in the hallways, at lunch, and this has kind of created a less scary environment, to put it. But that's the big focus for the cell phone policy. I did also want to highlight the college fair. Attleboro hosted the college fair on Monday, September 30th, and we had 106 schools at the college. We had the Ivy Leagues, we had the UMass schools, we had schools from California, from New York, from Pennsylvania, from all across the nation. We had trades come in as well. We had local companies come in. We had the city of Attleboro come in. We had Capron Park Zoo, and we had a lot of opportunities for all of our students, regardless of if they wanted to go into a trade or directly into like a 2 or 4 year program. And I believe that is it. Pretty much everything I got.
No, the Attleboro College Fair tends to be one of the larger ones in the area, so it's a great opportunity. Have you heard anything, you mentioned the cell phone policy, have you heard anything from the educators about how it's been going from their perspective?
So I have heard a little bit of confusion from some of the educators about what you would do in like a fire drill, for example. However, that was mainly towards the beginning of the school year. We're talking like early September. It's died down a lot since then, and I feel like there have definitely been meetings to clarify that among the staff. So everything's kind of smoothed out and went down.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Excellent. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the spotlight for the strategic plan, but what I'm going to do is actually turn it over to Superintendent Sawyer for his report, where he will introduce the strategic plan as part of the report. Mr. Sawyer?
Thank you, Chairman. It's as I said in Friday's update, it's hard to imagine that we're back at the need to plan another 5-year strategic plan. I think it's a nice moment to reflect on how far the last 2 plans have carried us and why we believe in strategic planning in this district and why I think it served us well. I know that in a lot of places, mention of a strategic plan gets an eye roll. I think there are lots of organizations that don't have the kind of success that we have. And I think it serves us particularly well because as an underfunded district, it is hard to make progress on the things that you'd like to get to that aren't pressing in the moment. Our daily problems could easily overwhelm us, and it's easy to fall into short-term thinking, to only worry about what's right in front of you and just trying to survive the day or the moment. And our strategic plan allows us to make hard decisions, to prioritize our future over necessarily the most pressing need in the moment. And that's how we're able to accomplish the things that we can, even though we're, working from, fewer resources than most of our neighboring communities. And so our strategic plan is a value document because it allows us to plant a flag and say, this is what we believe in, this is what we're trying to get to. And so when people ask, well, why is this decision being made? It's easy to express that this is why, this is where this is coming from. And That kind of authority has, again, really served us well. I think it's important, though, to remember that the plan is the community's strategic plan, right? As represented by the school committee, who is the one that approves and adopts the strategic plan. It needs to represent what we in the city of Attleboro want for our schools and what we're trying to get to. And as Lori's going to get into in a moment, from our perspective, we feel like we've established a really strong foundation with the work that we've done over the last 10 years. And so we see this next plan as being a continuation of that work. We feel like, we have a good thing going, and we need to now just identify what are the next, discrete steps that we want to take on, our journey towards where we're trying to get to. But as administrators, that's our assessment, and we plan to be straightforward with everybody that that's how we think about it. But part of this process is to engage the community and get feedback on that to make sure that is the sentiment and that we have that right, and that the plan is going to represent the community's wishes for the schools. And so, one of the things that we're going to get into right now is that, step one is to go out and engage the community and get their feedback. And so we're going to make a real concerted effort to invite families to come in and join us in a conversation about, where they see the district needing to go and what kind of issues we need to tackle in the next plan. And, just really encourage anyone listening at home to come and find one of the events to join us so that voices can be heard and that we can get the roundest perspective on what we need to do. So those are my 2 cents, and at this point I'll turn it over to Ms. Regan to walk you through what the plan is.
Superintendent Sawyer. So as we mentioned earlier, we're rounding out the completion of our second 5-year plan, and just want to acknowledge a couple things. First, with both plans, we made, I think, gains in providing improved educational opportunities for our students. We've improved the quality of our learning experiences. We personalized some programming, and we made a real effort to engage the community. We are definitely grateful for all of the individuals that were part of crafting those 2 plans, and then all of the individuals that were part of actually implementing them. As Superintendent Sawyer said, sometimes it's hard to maintain focus on what the long-range planning is when there's so many things coming at you in the day-to-day. And so we appreciate everyone's continued focus on the long-range plan. We recognize that some goals took longer than expected, but we persevered through that and feel like we came out stronger on the other side, and recognize that this new plan is an opportunity for us to really think about what areas we want to strengthen and really deepen our focus, so that we can continue with the work that we have already started. We also recognize that within these 2 plans, there are a number of items that we still need to focus on. And so with that, we want to make sure that we maintain a focus on our academic outcomes. We want to continue our focus on our portrait of a graduate, and then continue with all of the work that we have already started, and continue to improve our engagement with the community and with our families. And we also want to take this time to assess the work that's already been done and make sure that what we have planned to do in the past 5 years matches where we're going and where we're headed within the next 5 to 10 years as well. So what does this process look like? As Superintendent Sawyer said, we want to make sure we engage the community. We want to make sure our families have the opportunity to assess the work that we've done with this current plan, give them a status update. We want to reaffirm our current tenets, including our mission and vision, and ensure that our essential beliefs and priorities are still what we'll be using in order to make decisions, educational decisions, financial decisions moving forward. And we also want to make sure that we provide a broad overview of what our goals are moving forward, and solicit feedback on those as well. The second part of the process will be to have smaller focus groups where we look specifically at goals and strategic outcomes and receive critical feedback on those, constructive feedback, and as we're drafting the plan. And then from there, we'll make adjustments, and the end result would then be for us to present that plan, that final plan to you on June 2nd. And actually, it says 2024, June 2nd, 2025, excuse me. And then it will be placed on the website for review and made public. So with the plans coming, we've already planned for the first one to be held on Thursday, October 17th at 6 p.m. at Hyman Fine. We've scheduled these meetings across the city over the next few weeks, so all families are invited to attend. You don't have to, your child doesn't have to attend that particular school. You can go to any of the meetings as long as they fit within your schedule. We know that there's a lot of evening events that are going on with families, and want to give everyone an opportunity to attend the one that works for their family's schedule. So we hope that everyone will be able to join us. We look forward to having these conversations moving forward. Anyone have any questions?
Any questions, comments from the committee? Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Gez. Again, I'm very excited to see that the community is being involved and we're reaching out for their feedback. You know, as you said, it's the community school, which is great. What are some of the ways that we're going to be able to push this schedule out to the community?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. We'll be sharing it with the principals. So this graphic that you see up on the screen will be sent out into the principals' newsletters over the next few weeks. And it'll be included in that until the last one. And it'll be shared on our website, on the social media pages, so everyone will have access to the information.
Multifaceted approach.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So in anticipation of the administration contacting me for committee involvement, if anyone on the committee is interested in participating, please either let me know after the meeting tonight or reach out in the, I'll say by the end of this week to let me know. And I'll coordinate with Ms. Regan. We've historically had 2 to 3 members represent the committee in the strategic planning process, and it's an exciting process, to say the least. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Regan.
Thank you, Chairman Geddes.
I have one other piece of business for you this evening. I'm going to call up Mr. Furtado to help me with that one.
Good evening. We actually, at this point, a couple of years ago, brought a document to Finance and then to the committee, just as an informational piece. It's a guideline for the management of grants in the school district, showing internal controls financially. It's a required document for financial operation of a school district. It's also a required document for the financial operation of a municipality. So the city had pointed out that the school committee did not formally vote on this. It was actually an informational presentation to the committee at the time. The auditing requirement for the city requires a school committee approval of the document. So we are here to request a formal approval of our internal control manual in order for the city to comply with its auditing responsibilities.
All right, so with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the Attleboro Public Schools Draft Internal Controls Manual for federal grants.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Any Any comments, questions, concerns? Mr. Storrs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure I already looked at this way back when it came before us last time, and I started to, I went through it this time, 56 pages though, so I didn't, get into the nitty-gritty. Is it safe to say that this meets all of the requirement of our current policies in regard to grants?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Short and sweet. Thank you. So next on the agenda is the resolution in support of Massachusetts ballot question 2. I will first entertain a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. So at our last meeting, Dr. Hall was here, a community member representing the MTA, the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and asked the committee to consider a resolution to support ballot question 2, which calls for the removal of MCAS exams as a graduation requirement. The resolution was shared with the committee as part of their packets. My thought on putting this on the agenda was, as a community member coming forward and asking for us to consider or take a stand on something related to education in our district and the schools. I wanted the opportunity for us to discuss this as a committee. I communicated to the committee this morning, in part that this vote is not necessarily where we stand individually on the ballot question ourselves, but more where we as a committee would stand in regards to question 2. So with that background information, I'll open up for discussion. Does anybody have any comments? Mr. Larson?
I do. So I spent some time reviewing the resolution and then trying to do some research about it online, and I have a few concerns. The way the bill is currently written, accountability would be established sometime in the future. I could not tell when that would be or who would be establishing it. So for me, that's a huge concern. I have no problem with adjusting MCAS or coming up with something new as a better way of judging the level of education that we're producing for the public. But the taxpayers are investing $100 million every year for us to educate the students of Attleboro. Without established accountability, how can we show them that we're providing a high level of learning for the students? Without MCAS, I fear that we're going to go back to having some very big variations from city to city. I know when my kids were very young, there were different districts that are always thought of more highly than others because of the level of funding that went to their education in those towns and just the education level. I think MCAS leveled a lot of that playing field out. So without a more robust way of establishing the accountability, I cannot support the resolution or the ballot question as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Any other comments or thoughts? Mr. Frappier?
Sure. So just to talk about in support of the resolution, while the Mass Association of Superintendents decided to say people should vote against this ballot question, what is that group? MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committee Members, said we should be voting for it, lend their support. And I would say that I'm not concerned about losing my train of thought on this, an accountability measure. We will get there, and it doesn't specify, but I would assume along with MCAS, it would be approved by DESE. And to Mr. Larson's point, I would also argue that there are still school districts thought of highly or poorly, even with the MCAS system. And I think that removing this as an individual requirement for graduation would not harm our reputation either way. There would be other ways to assess whether a student should graduate, and I don't think it would impact the district all that much. And that being said, high stakes testing is not a great measure of how successful someone will be in the workforce or even in college. So I think we should vote in favor of supporting this ballot initiative this fall. One, to just accomplish a better system for our students, and also as one of the early members of MCIEA as an alternative to MCAS, I think we should put our money where our mouth is as a school district and move forward with that as an accountability measure and a better idea of how people should qualify to graduate.
Thank you, Mr. Frappier. Mr. Storrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so I did find it odd, well, maybe not so much, that, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees voted in favor of removing this requirement while the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents voted against it. In looking at the reasoning from both, I believe the superintendent group is right. There is no stipulated alternative statewide standard for what they would replace this with. I think that's problematic. I hate the idea of saying we're going to get rid of something, but we'll replace it maybe with something someday, maybe. That's a problem. If they had a legitimate thing to replace it with, what they say is, and require instead that districts certify that students have satisfactorily completed coursework demonstrating mastery. Well, look, I think we all agree, and Attleboro has been saying this for a long time. Students' ability isn't solely one test, but that is something that we use for accountability, and Massachusetts is where it is right now because of accountability. We're the #1 state in the country when it comes to student achievement in math and ELA, and I think at least to some level, maybe not a big level, but to some level, it's the fact that we require our students to show that they have a minimum level of competency, not a mastery as it's written here, but the minimum level of competency in what's required by the state. And that happens in 10th grade. And I think the administration would agree if a student doesn't pass the 10th grade test, they get to take it again. And we're going to provide the supports to them to help them with what they're not mastering. Is that a fair, or not minimally required? Is that a fair statement? That we work with our students so that when they take it again in 11th grade, hopefully they were able to pass that requirement. And if they don't pass it in 11th grade, they get a chance to take it again. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are.
Yeah. Okay. So the point is, it's not like we just say, oh, you failed it in 10th grade, you don't get a degree, sorry. No, we work with our students so that they can show over years that they are meeting that minimum 10th grade level requirement. So to say we don't need that anymore, I think that would degrade what the standardized testing is. Again, I think we all agree, I started to say it before, it's not about one test. It's a lot of other factors that goes into student achievement, and we talk about that all the time here. But it's also ironic that just a week ago we were in this room talking about MCAS results, which I know the administration will be presenting on next meeting. So I think everybody knows, as soon as that MCAS results come out, I've been spending the last couple of weeks going through them, and I'll be sending that spreadsheet out to everybody. The point is, there's value in that data. And all of a sudden, the value is there because it's important. That standardized test, especially at 10th grade, is important because of that graduation requirement. And if you remove that, I think it degrades the importance of that test, of that standardized test. So I also cannot support this.
Thank you, Mr. Storrs. Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a difficult issue for me because I am personally in favor of the ballot question. I believe that it is time to remove the graduation requirement, and I would extend that I think that it's really that accountability and assessment are critical functions, right? You cannot know where your students are if you don't assess them, and I think that in the short term, continuing to administer that test is a very good idea, and this ballot initiative doesn't tell anybody. We will still be initiating, we'll still be administering the MCAS test. And continuing to proceed with the MCIEA and look for a real non-high stakes, non-examination based multiple choice testing sort of way to assess our kids, look for learning losses and see what we need to correct. However, I don't believe that this is something that the school committee needs to address. It's on the ballot in this fall, and I don't think that the school committee needs to be taking a stance on this right now. I don't think that in general, I think the school committee should be a relatively non-political body, and that this is in, and we're taking a stance and telling people who to vote for, or how to vote. So that for that reason alone, and not because of the substance of the ballot question, I'm going to be a no vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Any other comments?
I do, if no one else wants to go.
Go ahead, Mr. Frappier.
So just to discuss some of the other items that we have, there are other graduation requirements that are still there. And to go back to the history lesson we went through with Mr. Storrs, he's right. When this test was introduced, we started seeing an uptick in scores. But that is also, at the same time, this went into effect in 1993, the state started to pour more money into all the school districts. Educational funding went up for the last nearly 30 years, so 31 years in a row, consistently. So I would argue, I don't think it's the test that is showing us the results. I think it's increased funding from the state level. Because in the 80s, again, I don't think a ton of us were paying attention in this room, Massachusetts schools were in the middle of the pack. We were not the best, we were not the worst. But I argue as we increase our funding, we are seeing better results that aren't for the MCAS testing. So I would still say I don't really think it's a great measure of someone is eligible to graduate. It was just an accountability measure early on. I think 30 years has proven that funding helps the grades, not an MCAS test. And the quality of our students that we're seeing with the MCAS grades, it's also part of the reason, one, with increased funding, Massachusetts has some of the highest density of folks with bachelor's degrees or higher in the state of Massachusetts. Also, Massachusetts enjoys a higher than average salary in a household income. And as we've talked about before, you can tell someone's educational outcomes by their zip code. Massachusetts benefits from that, especially in this metro area. So all this to say, I think I'm not really saying something that we don't know, but Massachusetts does good or does well because of the funding, not because of the test. And because of that and our pioneering of the MCIEA, I would reiterate, I think we should vote in support. And I don't believe it's political. This is not a candidate. Partisan people are mixed. There's Republicans and Democrats and unenrolled on either side of this issue. So I don't believe we're telling people, do this because it's what a Democrat or a Republican do. We're saying, we're the school committee. We spend a few hours a month talking to the district and learning about the education system. And we think, yes, Attleboro would still be on the right path even if we didn't have this. And your students would be able to find lower stakes ways to show their success. But that being said.
Thank you, Mr. Frappier. Mr. Storrs?
Thank you. Yeah, so kind of, I agree with you. Funding, of course, affects student achievement. Nobody would ever argue differently. We advocate for that every single year. The test, the funding helps provide the education. The standardized test helps verify. It's a verification. They're two related things, but they're not the same thing, right? The funding helps us provide the education. The standardized test helps us ensure that we are doing the right things and allows us to look at the data and say, ooh, we need to put a little bit more effort there or there or there. So again, I agree with what you're saying. The funding, of course, is a big part of why Massachusetts does as well as it does. But as far as the politics of this, the fact that this committee already seems to be split on this issue shows that politically this isn't something, in my opinion, this committee should be deciding. Like, if we were unanimous across the board that we should go one way or the other, then fine, I'd be for this or against it, depending if we all agreed. The fact that we're split shows that this is probably not something that, because, if this committee votes 5-4 to do one or the other, is that really something that this committee would want to do? Say that we all, we support this now because 5 out of 9 voted one way. I don't think so. That's my opinion.
Or 4 out of 7 for tonight.
Oh, right, 4 out of 7. Exactly. Thank you.
So,
Sorry, one more thing. If we feel it's too political as a committee, I would encourage those who feel it's too political to abstain from the vote. That would be my encouragement. If you figure you can't make a decision, you feel like you're telling the voters what to do, I would encourage you to abstain.
And I'll respond and say that's a good way for you to get what you want out of this.
okay. From my perspective, having given the background, this committee has discussed the issues that we have as a body with MCAS for as long as I can remember on the committee. We have not necessarily been impressed with how it has served us as an evaluation tool. We understand the restrictions and barriers that it creates for students. knowing the amount of money that the state puts towards MCAS every year, rather than putting that into the school districts has always been a concern. And I would say one of the largest concerns that we hear from constituents about the schools is that we're not spending enough time teaching life skills and applicable curriculum because we're, quote unquote, teaching to the tests. And we have to teach to the tests to prove that we're a successful district as constructed currently. So I think our concerns about MCAS as an overall evaluation and accountability system have been well documented. That being said, I also think that that there does need to be some kind of shared accountability system, and that's what the work with MCIEA, as Mr. Frappier mentioned, is working towards. My understanding is that there's that there has been an alternative test developed, but not necessarily identified as a replacement for graduation requirements and statewide assessment. And so while I have significant concerns with MCAS, and I personally, like Mr. Bennett said, personally speaking, I don't think that MCAS should be considered as a graduation requirement. It's not something, given the lack of alternatives, and seeing some of the other folks, I know Secretary Tutwiler was another person that was opposed to question, has come out as opposed to question 2. So those are my concerns with us considering this resolution as well. Does anybody have any other concerns or comments, rather? All right. To Mr. Frappier's point, this does appear to be a split vote, so I'm going to do a roll call. I'll start with Mr. Bennett.
No.
Ms. Porto.
No.
Mr. Storrs.
No.
Mr. Larson.
No.
Mr. Geddes is a no. Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
And Mr. Frappier.
Yes.
Right. The motion fails 5-2. And I think as we heard in that discussion, that's not by no means is this an endorsement of MCAS as a graduation requirement from this body. I think the context, and I want to thank the committee for some very thoughtful discussion on this. Like I said at the beginning, I do think it's important for us to provide that feedback when asked by the community. So thank you very much for that. Next item on the agenda is approval of our minutes from our September 16th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any corrections, thoughts, questions from the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Consent items. We have 5 items on the consent agenda tonight. A motion to accept a contractual obligation in the amount of $41.70 from Bay State Textiles to Hill Roberts Elementary School. A motion to accept a contractual obligation in the amount of $30.75 from Planet Aid as broken down in the check receipt dated September 27th, 2024 to Brennan Middle School. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $300 from Westat to the Willett, to be deposited in the Willett Elementary School gifts donation line for educational purposes. Motion to accept a donation of school supplies, water bottles, clothing, and lunch boxes with an estimated value of $935 from the Greater Attleboro Area Council for Children to be distributed amongst families in all of the schools. And motion to accept a donation in the amount of $16,385 from the Willett Elementary School PTO for the purchase of interactive displays.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Real quick.
Mr. Storrs.
Whenever I see, $16,000 donation from the PTOs, I think we really should take note of that. So thank you very much to the Willa PTO and everything that they did and all the families that supported their fundraising activities.
Absolutely. And in line with that, anytime a community organization makes donations like the Greater Attleboro Area Council for Children did here tonight, anything that can further support our students and families in most need is absolutely welcome and appreciated. Any other comments? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Subcommittee meetings. We'll start with our Teaching and Learning Subcommittee from their meeting on October 1st. And for that update, I will turn it over to Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Geddes. So the meeting of the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee covered two pretty meaty topics that night. The first topic that we covered was high school grading, and we're happy to have Mr. Gorman and Mr. Hodges come in to discuss the process of rethinking the rating practices that we started before the pandemic. So right now, with the grading practices, it's on a 100-point scale, with the minimum being a 45. And we discussed the pros and cons of moving from that rating to the alphanumeric, A through F, with an A being a 4, B being a 3, so the 1 to 4 scale. This proposed change is only going to affect the high school. It's something that, again, there's going to be focus groups scheduled to gather input from both the staff and the families, and the target for the implementation isn't going to be until the next school year. I am happy to report that Aspen has the programming in place, so that there's not going to be a large cost to make this change, and it shouldn't be a heavy lift for making the programming changes. So more to come on that in future meetings. We also were lucky to get a preview to the MCAS results for the district that came out. As you all know, we're going to have a full presentation on the next school committee by the administration. Just real high level to let you know, there were definitely some clear improvements. There are also some areas of concern, but I can say that generally speaking, the district is seeing a lot of gains and seeing a closing of any gaps related from the pandemic. The administration's already taken time to visit the buildings. I believe you visited all the buildings by now, yes. To review the data for each individual building and to make sure that the plan that was already put in place for curriculum is going to map over and make sure it's addressing any areas of concerns, and there have made any adjustments as needed in the curriculum. So I don't want to spend too much more on that, steal any thunder for next week's meeting. The administration's being very thoughtful and taking a look as to causes and plans for going forward. But again, it's I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised and expecting a good report, generally speaking, next week. And that concludes my report.
Excellent. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next is an update from our Finance and Budget Subcommittee from their meeting on October 2nd, 2024. For that, I will turn it over to Mr. Larson.
Thank you. Finance and Budget Subcommittee met October 2nd. Ms. Perella took us through the monthly reports, and still being early in the school year, we're in good shape. We haven't been around yet to get in too much trouble, so that's encouraging. But we'll see how the rest of the year goes and keep our fingers crossed. So there are two motions that are being brought forward. First is a motion to send to the Municipal Council for approval of prior year invoices in the amount of $2308.40. Backup for all that, I believe, was sent to everybody in their packet.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any questions, concerns? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Second item, so with the new high school, we have charging stations around the the building. I believe we have 16 of them around the facility. Part of this was when the building was being built, there were certain things that we provided in the build to gain additional credits so that, we could be, saving some money by putting some of these more energy efficient and clean energy aspects to the building. One of those obviously is the charging stations. So they've come online, and it's come to our attention, working back and forth with the city, that the way the city is collecting those funds, it basically just, people pay for the use of the charging station, and those funds get directed straight to the city. The electricity used to run the charging station comes on our bill. So we're paying for it, and they're getting the money. So the motion that's basically here is a motion to request that the city allocate the proceeds from the ChargePoint Fund credits to go directly to the schools, and ask that the previous credit payments be reallocated back to the school department also. And we'll see how we do.
So moved.
Oh, so moved?
Second?
Second.
Okay, questions, concerns? Yes, Mr. Brent.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
That's okay. I just was trying
Really
to,
excited.
trying to keep myself out of trouble. I was trying to do it in the right order, so.
How much money are we talking about?
I'm going to defer to,
We're $300 a month.
Oh. Not a game changer, but it's a reasonable amount of money.
Yeah, it's
enough to
not-
go and ask.
Not nothing, yeah.
Perfect.
Mr. Storrs.
As far as the ChargePoint credits, is there any other units throughout the city besides here at the high school? Units of that nature?
In the city?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So it's easily known which are the credits we're looking for, or the,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
I think everyone involved has identified the issue on both sides. Mr. Gibbs.
So you may have just answered my question. The city anticipates this request to them. We're not surprising them with asking to be reimbursed.
Yes. So the default without direction from the school committee is the funds go back to the general fund.
They're hoping we
That
vote
wasn't-
no.
That wasn't their intent, it's just the.
It's just
way
the
it works.
procedure, right.
So
Absolutely.
they needed direction from the school committee.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Chairman, that is all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. The next item on the agenda is open forum. Is there anyone here that would like to address the school committee as part of open forum? Seeing none, I will close open forum. Upcoming meetings, our Infrastructure and Facilities Subcommittee is meeting this Wednesday, October 9th, 2024 at 6:30 PM, and I believe that meeting is at the Willett Elementary School Media Center.
Yes.
Excellent. And then the next full school committee meeting is Monday, October 21st, 2024, here in the Zito Conference Room at 6:30. Any other updates or general information for the committee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you and have a great night.